I'm fascinated by AI, consciousness, computing, all the trendy stuff, the big problems, the hard problem of consciousness, the nature of free will. And these are some of the ideas I want to explore in my game. Crazy, right? I mean, what have I got so far? Spaceman walking around orthogonally in a scene using assets that are based on monochrome sprites, 32 by 32 pixels that I created in 1985. But you've got to start somewhere. And the key thing is just to keep iterating. The big problem I've had throughout my development life is I want to make something amazing, and of course you can't make something amazing. It doesn't work like that. You have to take steps. You have to believe that you can make something amazing, but you have to start small. You have to iterate. You have to learn, and you just have to keep going. So, that said, I'm working on a conversation system. And when I say working on a conversation system, I haven't written one from scratch. I'm using an asset called dialogue system, which is pretty reputable, it seems, and very flexible. So I've been using it to set up an initial conversation between an AI and you the player, who is also an AI who is being trained. And this is just so much easier and yet so much harder than it used to be. Let me explain. Easier in that you can integrate it and get something simple going very quickly indeed, ridiculously quickly. In the old days, when I was working on Chimera, there was no conversation system. Could have done one, of course, but there was feedback from the game. And the way that worked was I had a character set, which I drew by hand onto graph paper. I converted into hex bytes. I typed those hex bytes into my assembler editor. And then I had a text printing routine, which, for Chimera, that text printing routine had two variations. The first was to print the characters in an 8x8 grid, very straightforward, and the other was to print exactly the same characters but double width. So my text system would take a character string, which again typed in by hand into an assembler editor, no localization back then, and my text printing routine would grab those text strings and display them on the screen, all in assembler, of course, Z80, the first one. And then there was scrolling, and scrolling meant shifting the actual pixels on the screen. And there are two ways of doing that. The first way is to actually shift the pixels on the screen, and the other way is to draw them shifted. And I drew them shifted, at least I'm pretty sure I did. Everything else was drawn shifted. Anyway, now you have a dialogue system, which is a massive asset, full of features, massively programmable, allows you to create complete conversations, and that makes things easy to begin with. But then, of course, you have so much flexibility and power. You're already beginning to think about all the things that you could do with it. Now, that's a mistake. It's best to start off very simple, start with a conversation that makes sense, has very little conditional logic in there, very little branching, and very few variables. So that's what I started with. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is it's great to make a video to show what I've been working on, but it's not very productive and it's not very sensible to aim for meaningful progress every single day. Yes, you could make meaningful progress, but you shouldn't expect to be able to show that every single day. Now, it's not an excuse not to talk about what I'm up to. The point I'm trying to make is that you have a task. It takes longer than a day. Obviously, you need to track that task and make sure you stay on task and don't get distracted. But it's important not to beat yourself up if the thing that you set out to do isn't done in a day. And when I say a day, it's not like I'm spending all day or all night working on this. I get a couple of hours. I have plenty of other responsibilities. This is a purely creative and very much a selfish endeavour. That's it, really. Starting with dialogue, I'm clearly a lot more positive than I was yesterday. I feel a lot better. Sometimes your physiology plays tricks on you. So yesterday, if you remember, I was cold, I was exhausted, and I had some blood sugar issues. Now, the instinct is to relate that negative feeling with all the times you felt negative before, and to think, this is just me. And I'm always like this, and I'm a loser, and I'll never make any progress, and I'm always like this when the chips are down. And that's the resistance, and you've got to ignore that and say, no, this is how I feel. And I talked yesterday about having a grab bag of tricks that you can use. And I certainly have my own grab bag. One of those tricks that I pull out of the bag is exercise. The other is just movement, quick movement. And the other is to do whatever you're doing, but do it faster than usual. A cold shower is good. Sometimes you just need a light meal. And other times you just need to switch track to something else and come back. And then sometimes you do the absolute minimal possible thing. Another good trick is, I'm going to do one task in the next 45 minutes. Choose a time quantum, doesn't matter. Keep it less than an hour and stay focused on that task. To begin with, it might only be 5 minutes, but stay focused on the task, be present, and accept that you're just going to do a tiny little bit in that time and be satisfied with that. And sometimes that will extend into more time. It'll be sufficient to build up enough momentum. So there you go. That's where I'm at the moment, working on a conversation system. It's better and worse than it used to be, and I'm going to keep going. Another video soon, hopefully, of the initial conversation, for which I have several ideas, and then the first, if you like, mission or quest or task that you've got to accomplish. But it's progress, and progress is always good.